A lot of them do seem to be in Xinjiang. I put the war on terror in inverted commas because you can't have a war on an abstract noun. It's nonsense. I can say, all right, I'm declaring a war on sarcasm. It's meaningless, just words. So I'm not treating it as a proper military operation. But anyway, China loved it. They really couldn't get over their luck when, post 9/11, they could carry on doing exactly what they were doing in Xinjiang anyway, but get a big pat on the back from George W. Bush for doing it. And they managed to get the East Turkestan Independence Movement, ETIM, declared a terrorist organisation, so it's on the official list as a terrorist group. We found out one of its family members, actually, he was executed a couple of years ago. NGOs who watch this kind of thing say the evidence was not cast iron, but you know, I don't know. Definitely some Chinese Uyghurs have fought in Chechnya and in Afghanistan, but some of them were just in Afghanistan because being in China was difficult for them, including some who got scooped up and ended up in Guantanamo Bay. There were 21 of them there. There are only 5 left. And of course, it's terribly difficult to know what to do with them now they've decided they're not actually terrorists. Because they can't send them back to China, because they expect them to be tortured and possibly executed. Half of them have gone to Bermuda and half of them have gone to Palau in the South Pacific. I've been in Urumqi in January when it's been -18 and I can see the appeal of Bermuda for people like that, although it must be so weird for them. But as you see, they're all released without charge. They were just scooped up because they happened to be in Afghanistan and couldn't give a convincing explanation for it. And they were Chinese Uyghurs. There are rumours of training camps inside Xinjiang itself, and there are a lot of rumours about this summer's events that people came from outside Urumqi. I was talking to one of my colleagues about this a couple of days ago, and he'd been there quite recently and said officials were telling him that they felt that quite a few bodies weren't claimed, Uyghur bodies this is, and they didn't seem to have any family in Urumqi, so they took that as evidence that they come from elsewhere, which is very possibly true. But then again, it is the provincial capital, and you would expect migrant workers from around the rest of the province, so might not be anything more than that. They haven't found anyone they could identify as foreign, as far as I know. I think camps inside Xinjiang, it's unlikely. I mean, it is a huge place, but they keep a pretty close eye on it, PLA. I think if there are any Uyghur training camps, they almost certainly outside China's borders. In 2002, when they were getting very overexcited about the war on terror, they tried to prove they were linked to Al-Qaeda, because that was the big sport then for governments to link everything to Al-Qaeda. And there's no evidence for it, basically, so I'm fairly confident that that's a non-starter as well. This year, of course, Rabia Kadir's World Uyghur Congress, the American organisation, were blamed for stirring it all up. Internationally, they are those seen as the good guys. The European Parliament spoke very handsomely about them for their efforts to break the cycle of violence and so on and so forth. They're not remotely terrorist, and they're, I think, probably didn't have anything to do with what went on this year. And having spoken again to a few of my colleagues about it, I don't think any serious observers in China actually believe that either. It was just, a convenient scapegoat. Right, again, if you've looked at the leaflet, you've had a little introduction to this already. There were, a lot of them have gone home for understandable reasons. There were a lot of Uyghur migrant workers in Shaoguan and other bits of Guangdong province. There was something like actually 96,000 shipped off to Guangdong altogether. Because the Chinese government is trying to do something economically to improve Uyghur living standards, it is actually fairly embarrassed about the disparity between Han Chinese and Uyghur living standards there. And this was a sort of crude, but it could have been an effective way of doing it. That is, take them from the impoverished interior province, send them to Guangdong where they can get better wages, and work there for a year or two, earn a bit of money, maybe come home and go and do business on their own. Just the migration thing itself has been controversial. And I read a Chinese press article on it recently, and everybody they interviewed spontaneously said, nobody made us go, and they weren't even asked that. So then I thought, oh, perhaps someone made them go. Whereas if they never mentioned it, I would never have suspected that. It's been controversial because some young unmarried Uyghur women have gone to work in factories in Guangdong, and usually in that culture, unmarried women do not go away from their families and out of their control, certainly not thousands of miles away. So there's been a little bit of tension about that. But anyway, there they all were in Shaoguan, in a toy factory, in June, and these rumours started that 2 Chinese women, named women, this is very specific, 2 Chinese women, the names of whom all the workers knew, had been raped. by Uyghur workers, and that's what started it all off. The most complete account I found of how this rumour got started goes like this. Chinese woman worker, young woman, is going around the factory and she's looking for some room or other, and she goes the wrong way, and she finds that she's opened the door and walked into the Uyghur men's dormitory. This freaks her out a little because she's suddenly surrounded by strange men staring at her, and one of them sees that she's spooked and kind of goes, "Whoa!" and she screams, which is what he wants, and everyone laughs, and she feels a bit of a fool but goes away. But someone has heard a Chinese woman scream in the Uyghur men's dormitory. Within hours, this is a very specific rumour, not one woman but two, and rape. And then violence starts. Again, you've got quite a good account of it in there. It goes on all night before the police show up. They arrive. I'm sure there's lots of pride in Xinjiang. They're probably something very important that stop and go on with the thousands of rioting people who killed at least 2 Uyghurs. But they showed up at dawn when it was too late. Actually, one of the Chinese workers involved in this has been executed, and that was a shock locally that a death penalty was handed out for this, but it did bring them up a little bit short. A lot injured. There was a good account from a couple of the Uyghur workers who were interviewed by Radio Free Asia. So there's a good account of it on their website. And the guys they interviewed were very careful to explain what they had personally seen and what they had only heard about, and not to go wild about rumours because they could see the damage that had already done. So that was quite a sensible account. Anyway, so that's the end of June. So there's this whole programme of shipping Uyghurs off to Guangdong that some people aren't very happy about anyway, and then this happens and people are killed. And it was a Sunday, I think it was the 5th of July. A demonstration in People's Square which started off peaceful, but turned into scuffles with the police, and then got a bit worse than that later on. Protests also around the Argyle market, sometimes called the Grand Bazaar in Western literature. It is a bazaar, it's, well, I'll get to how grand it is later on. But basically, most of the violence occurs a few days later. Han Chinese residents of Urumqi feeling threatened and angry and not having a lot of confidence that the police will protect them and their property. And then it's a free-for-all several days and nights of the kind of really extreme civil unrest that China actually hasn't seen very often. I suppose Tibet the previous spring, a little bit of it, when those shops were burned and so on, but it's been quite rare on this level, in urban China anyway. In countryside it's always kicking off. Then again in September you had another flurry of it, again mostly Han Chinese violence then, because there were rumours that Uyghurs were attacking people with syringes in the streets, basically sticking them with syringes and infecting them with something, or dangerous drugs. Xinjiang has a very high rate of HIV infection, so this is scary stuff. And the police in Urumqi, I don't have any dealings with them personally, I've not formed a high opinion of them since. They sent text messages to everyone's mobile phones saying there may be people attacking you in the street with syringes, so be careful. So then everyone freaks out, of course, everyone's really scared. Hundreds of people went to hospital saying, help, I've been stabbed by a syringe. Fewer than 100 actually turned out to have been stabbed by anything, and some of those were mosquito bites. I don't get, can you get HIV? I'm pretty sure you can't get HIV from a mosquito bite. You get malaria, I suppose, but it wouldn't be anybody's fault, is the point. So, but people were just hysterical by then. And those protests in September, the Chinese crowds were shouting the government is useless and calling for the overthrow of every senior official in Xinjiang and Urumqi. They were really furious and felt that they were, being left in danger, and the government wasn't doing anything about it. The response, again, I'll come back in more detail, but information broke out much like Tibet last year, still going on. Apparently everyone who is still trying to do business out of Urumqi and foreigners there, they all go to Dunhuang, to the hotels, to use their internet connections, because that's about the nearest place you can usually get to out of Urumqi that still has proper internet on. And even mobile phone use is quite limited there. A lot of Uyghurs detained, 9 executions so far. And a new Strike Hard campaign, because that always helps so much. I will come back to Strike Hard. It's another feature of the way the Chinese government deals with things with which I have an opinion.